Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Angela Renee. I am the Administrative Director and Senior Client Service Manager at Halbert Hargrove. And today we are going to talk about well-lived lives. At Halbert Hargrove, that's actually one of our core missions. We believe in the fearless pursuit of well-lived todays and tomorrows. And a well-lived life is not just about money. So today we're going to share practical tips on how to design your well-lived life. And as we've been approaching the webinar this week, I keep thinking of a Dennis Waitley quote. And he says, "It is not in the pursuit of happiness that we find fulfillment, but in the happiness of pursuit." So that is my hope for all of us today, that in this pursuit, we will find some joy. We have a very special guest with us, and I want to introduce him. But first, I'd love to hear from all of you in the audience where you are calling in from today. So we invite you to show up in the chat box and just tell us where you're from. I am broadcasting to you from Long Beach, California. So I'm going to pause, see if anybody adds to the chat. And in the meantime, I want to introduce our guest speaker, James Whitaker. You can see him on your screen. And James is the author of 3 best-selling books. He's also the host of the top-rated Win the Day podcast. He's a frequent guest on radio, TV, and podcasts with more than 600 appearances. So he is a seasoned veteran. If you've joined us for other webinars, you'll see 2 more familiar faces, Samantha Garcia and Brian Spinelli. Samantha Garcia is a wealth advisor. She joined the firm in 2018. She is a certified financial planner, an accredited investment fiduciary, and a certified divorce financial analyst. Brian Spinelli has been with the firm since 2006. He is a senior wealth advisor and investment committee chairman. He is also certified financial planner and an accredited investment fiduciary. Just want to check and see where some of you are calling in from. We have quite a few in California. Hello to my California guests in Washington. Thank you. Pasadena, Denver, great. Minnesota, hello. Texas, wonderful. Great to see Arizona, more Arizona. Wonderful. And feel free, people, to keep filling that up as I talk. We are going to try to do a lot in the next hour, so we're going to begin shortly, but we have a special offer at the end, so we hope you'll stay with us. After James gives his presentation, he's also going to stay with us for the full hour to answer your questions. So just know the chat box is open to you starting now if you have specific questions that you want him to address. And prior to today's start, we sent out a workbook that James has prepared. We're also going to drop a link to that in the chat box in case you haven't had a chance to download it. Let's get started. Samantha, I'm going to pass over to you, and I'd love for you to warm up the room. Tell us your experience in working with a client and designing their well-lived life.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we talk about a lot with clients is, what do you want out of life? When's the last time you really thought about goals that weren't specific to finance or specific to, hey, I just want to do this today? We start all of our client conversations with, what are your goals? And I know, being an advisor, most people are like, well, I don't know what my financial goals are. I want to retire comfortably. And we challenge clients to think more about the day-to-day. What are they looking at day-to-day? What are they looking at in the long term? Not just money related, but what are your hopes and dreams? And I've walked a couple clients through specific things. One question we get is like, do I lease a car or do I buy a car? And it sounds simple and it sounds kind of cheesy sometimes, but you can Google the answer and you're going to find both sides are right. And it really comes down to your specific situation. Can you afford to lease the car? Can you afford maintenance on an older car? What kind of profession do you have? One of the specific clients I was talking with last week, actually, she was like, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you're in a profession where people are going to judge you by the car you drive. And she actually admitted to me that an advisor drove up to her door in an early 2000s car that wasn't in good shape. And she's like, why would I trust you with my money? I wouldn't let him come in. I wouldn't let him talk to me. And so, society has different things that, different bars that we all meet or have to meet. And it's important to look at each person's situation and figure out what's right for them. Thinking about another client, she was working in big tech and she was making a lot of money, but she wasn't really happy. She wasn't feeling fulfilled. And so we talked about what can I do? And her friend was starting a business. And she's like, do I have the financial capabilities to take a step back from this high paying job and take the risk and take the chance to see if it works out with my friend and see if we can make her business grow. So it's really not just about how much money can I make or how much do I need for retirement, but how are you developing meaning in your life? How can you make yourself, I'm going to meet my goals, but if you don't know where they start, or if you don't know what questions to ask, or if you don't have somebody who you can bounce things off of, where are you really finding the answers? So James, I'm going to transition it to you. He's going to challenge us to think about what we really want, and he's going to help us to create a plan for how to get it.
Samantha, thank you very much. It is so great to see all of you here. And I want to kick things off with a very big thank you, actually. I want to say a big thank you to all of you for turning up, for making the decision to register, for making the decision to attend. That means you're my tribe. I am there for people who want to turn up and improve their lives and make the world a better place. So my deepest thank you to you for being here today. And I also want to give a big shout out to Halbert Hargrove for organizing this amazing event. This is the most disjointed start to a year I have ever seen, with people who I talk to all over the world. There's been so much uncertainty and fear that continues to occur. So attending something like this is going to be really, really valuable. To kick things off, what I want to know from you is, what's one thing that you want to get out of this session today? Just put that into the chat. What's one thing that you want to get out of this session today? One thing you want to get out of this session today, just drop that into the chat. And while you're doing that, I'll give you a little bit of an overview about me. So my accent is from Australia. I spent the first 28 years of my life in Australia, where I was working actually in financial services. I was managing an advisor team for a company with more than $2 billion under management. And then I went from Brisbane in Australia all the way over to Boston in Massachusetts, about as far away from my hometown of Brisbane as you could get. I was studying an MBA over there. And since that time, I have actually launched products and companies in just about every industry that you can think of. And a lot of the work that I do now is with my podcast, which is called Win the Day with James Whitaker. I've interviewed more than 300 of the world's most successful and happiest people to unlock those secrets to success. And it's interesting to try and spot the commonalities between those different things. Now, anyone that I talk to, and I work with a lot of company founders and C-level executives to coach them, with people who I see who feel like they're not living with purpose or with passion, it's because of two things. They're not clear on who they are, and they're not clear on where they want to go. They're not clear on who they are, and they're not clear on where they want to go. So I want you to have a think about it. When was the last time you really asked yourself, who am I? Who am I, and where is it that I want to go? And there are a couple of those questions that I want to make sure we tackle today. I'm just having a quick look here in the chat. I want you to use this chat. I want to make this as interactive and engaging as possible. So if you've got any questions or comments, if there's something that stands out to you where you're like, wow, that's great, or an actionable tip, whatever it is, let's just make sure that we keep the good times rolling here in the chat. Cool. How do I achieve peace in my life? Yeah, very important, Eric. How to do less and have more. Absolutely. An idea that will make things a bit better in my day-to-day life. So true, Michael. And a lot of people forget that it's just one conversation, one idea, one relationship, one conversation can completely change the trajectory of our life. It's why I'm so big actually on the power of conversation. Learning something new. Just lost my mum. I'm so sorry to hear that, Lorna. Looking for a new direction. Clarity on where I want to go. Life, career, relationships. Awesome. We've got a bunch of things in here. All right, great. It looks like you've all come to the right place then. So what we're going to go through today, we're really going to go through three things. That's our session plan for today. The very first one is to raise your idea of what's possible. Number two is to create a plan for all that you want to achieve. And then number three is how to implement that plan. And that's really where win the day comes from, that win the day phrase that I'm known for. So what is a well-lived life? Well, let's just define that once and for all. Let's get that out there. Just think about what's one word when you think of a well-lived life. What word comes to mind? Just drop that into the chat right now. Would love to hear, as a group, as a collective, what can we use to define what a well-lived life is? And then once I see a few of these responses, I can share some thoughts that I have around what I feel is a well-lived life. All right, freedom. Yeah, absolutely. Intention. You know what? A lot of what we've spoken about already today and what we're going to talk about today is about meaning, and intent is very, very, very close to meaning. So I'm really happy to see this. Freedom, intent, happiness. Absolutely. Coming on 2 years with COVID, happiness is very, very important. Contentment, meaning, balance, happiness, experience, calm. Calm is a really, really big one. A lot of the people that I talk to now, it's about that pursuit of calm. Satisfaction, family, serenity, love, so many things in here. This is great. This is really, really powerful. What does a well-lived life mean to me? It looks like we're all on the same page here. Well, most people think about a well-lived life. Obviously not this group, thankfully, but most people think about a well-lived life exclusively on the accumulation of resources. Now, resources are very helpful and important, but that's not what a well-lived life means to me. To me, a well-lived life is about service, it's about education, it's about health, it's about freedom, it's about experiences, and it's about relationships. And we can see a lot of those things reflected here in the chat too. I want to dive into that in a little bit more detail right now. So service. What I mean by service is not how much we can get, it's how much we can give. How much we can give. Now, importantly, giving is what starts the receiving process. Giving starts the receiving process, but that's not why we give. We give because a well-lived life is one of service. So that's why we need to willingly give without the expectation of anything in return. So that's service. The next one is education. The more valuable we become, the more value we have to give others. Now, the more we can understand the situation and struggles of what other people are going through, and let's face it, people are going through a lot in the world at the moment. The more we understand that, the more we can provide them the help and the support they need. And when we're talking about in terms of education, there are so many amazing books. There's so many podcasts out there right now that you can level up your mindset very quickly and learn a lot of things that you can use to help other people and make yourself more valuable. But I also want you to think that sometimes the very best way to help and learn is simply to ask really inquisitive questions about a situation that someone else is in. What are those really deep, inquisitive questions that you can ask to those important people around you? Not the surface level stuff, the deep stuff, so you can get some deep responses in return. So that's education. The next one is health. Has anyone heard of American personal development icon Jim Rohn? Just put a yes into the chat if you've heard of Jim Rohn. He was someone who was very much my mentor into getting into that personal development world. And that I've never met Jim Rohn. Sadly, he's passed away. I actually found my way back to people like Napoleon Hill and Think and Grow Rich because of Jim Rohn. And Jim Rohn, my dad actually used to play me these cassettes. It used to drive me crazy as a kid. I wanted to listen to some good music on the radio in the car on the way to school. And he'd always play what I thought at the time were these really boring personal development cassettes from Jim Rohn. But it's amazing how much you pick up when you're a kid. And anyone who has a family will know what I'm talking about if you've got young kids. Jim Rohn said, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. Take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live. And that's not just the physical being, it's also your mental health as well, especially with what we've experienced in the last 2 years, because I really feel that the mental health pandemic is the real challenge that we're going through at the moment as a result of a lot of things that we have gone through. So that's health. Next is freedom. And what I mean by freedom here might be a little bit different to what you're thinking. When I think about freedom, I think about when you look at the week that you have ahead of you, all of the things that you have scheduled, do those things give you energy or do they take it away? Do they give you energy or do they take it away? When I talk about freedom, it's having a life, a calendar of things that are coming up for you that give you energy. You want to make sure that you're spending most of your time on activities and experiences and tasks that give you energy. So that's freedom. Next is experiences, feeling the thrill of getting out of your comfort zone so you can grow and you can learn and you can enjoy. And then finally, relationships. I don't need to talk about that one in any great detail. We all know that spending purposeful time with the people we care about the most is exceptionally important. So where do financial resources come in? Well, they just provide the capabilities for us to do so much of those different things. I mean, even if it's something as simple as contributing to a cause that we really care about, if there's a charity that we want to provide some financial means to, then having those financial resources at our disposal is a great way to do that, rather than having the intention of doing it, but no means to be able to doing it. And if all of those things came back to one core attribute, it would be meaning. It would be meaning. And I want you to think about how many times we use the word meaning today. And that's the one thing that I feel like is missing in the world at the moment, is that meaning. We need to find that meaning in service. We need to find that meaning in education, in health. We need to find that meaning in our weekly calendar, in our experiences, and especially find that meaning in our relationships. That lack of meaning, it's only been amplified by all that we've gone through in the last 2 years. It's the most uncertain time that this generation has ever faced. And when there's so much noise and fear and tension, uncertainty and conflict, we get pushed further and further to the sidelines. We get pushed to the sidelines to become a spectator in our own life. But that is not a well-lived life. A well-lived life can only come when you enthusiastically take ownership of your life and make the commitment to become a participant rather than a spectator. And there's a very, very big difference. So let's get to work on making you a participant in this one extraordinary life you've been gifted. If you're with me, drop a yes into the chat right now. All right, love it. Can feel the energy. Number one, so this is what we're going to talk about first of all, is elevating your idea of what's possible for you. One of the most difficult parts of the isolation that we've all experienced in the last 2 years is how we've lost that human connection. Aside from missing smiles and other indicators of that positive body language that's happened, it's literally been masked from the masks that we've all had to wear. We're not having the same frequency and depth of social interaction that we're used to. And humans, we're social beings. We require that connection to help us find meaning in our lives. So to raise your idea of what's possible, you need to connect with people and spend a lot of time with people who bring you joy, people who bring you possibility and raise your possibility, and people who bring you value. Unfortunately, you're stuck with just me today, but I wanted to share the story of some friends of mine who have these, these are deeply emotional and inspiring motivators for me, and I know they will be for you too. The first story that I want to share with you is with a guy named Jim Stovall. Now, a lot of you might have heard of Jim Stovall before. At the age of 16, it was Jim Stovall's dream to play for the Dallas Cowboys NFL team. And at the age of 16, Jim had failed a routine physical in high school, and he was sat down by 3 doctors, and they said to him, "Jim, we're not sure how and we're not sure why, but we do know that very soon you're going to go totally and permanently blind, and there's nothing we can do about it." Imagine that at the age of 16, being told that your life would literally fade to black like the end of a movie. Jim was given a pair of dark sunglasses and a white cane and a room in his house, and told that would be his safe space where he would be safe to see out his days. But someone else's idea of Jim's potential wasn't what he accepted as reality. So Jim realized that people who were blind and visually impaired could not enjoy television and movies in the same way as other people could. He found a problem. There was no solution to it. So Jim created it. He became the founder of the narrative television network that is now available in more than a dozen countries around the world. Yeah, Curtis just said The Ultimate Gift. They made a movie about it. It's incredible. Jim also became, in addition to being the founder of the narrative television network, also became the author of 30 best-selling books, still writing today. Do you know how many books he wrote before he was blind? Not a single one. author of 30 best-selling books, and founder of a television network while blind. It's incredible because Jim realized the most important opinion is how you feel about yourself. And he asked himself, in the face of the most significant adversity, what is the gift in this? What is the gift in this? I love Jim's story. Jim's an amazing guy, so I wanted to share that with you. Another story, because I'm a big believer in the power of story because we remember it, and it's so inspiring to see the actions that other people have taken. So the other story that I want to share with you today is Janine Shepard. Now, Janine Shepard was an Australian cross-country skier who had qualified for the Winter Olympics in Calgary in Canada. And just a few months before she was to fly to Canada for the Winter Olympics, she was doing her rigorous training regime, which included a lot of long bicycle rides. So she was riding her bike in the Blue Mountains outside of Sydney in Australia when bang, she just got hit by this truck. And then she was airlifted to hospital where she spent 10 days in a coma, and her parents were told to say their goodbyes to her. This actually gives me, it's still it's quite uncomfortable actually for me to talk about this. Janine lost almost every drop of blood in her body. And after 10 days, she woke up. She then spent the next 6 months in the spinal ward, where she was told that she would never be able to, her athletic dreams had completely evaporated and her physical being was damaged beyond repair. And she would have to get used to things like never having kids, never being able to walk, having to use a catheter for the rest of her life, all of these different things. But as with Jim, she did not accept someone else's limitations on her future as her reality. Janine was sitting in a wheelchair one day. She saw a plane fly overhead, and she said to herself, if I can't walk, I'll fly. Janine was put into the cockpit of a plane for her first flying lesson in an all-body plaster cast. She eventually went on to become a pilot instructor, and then incredibly an aerobatics pilot. Amazing story. Janine has now had 3 kids. She can ride a bike. She can ski despite still being classified as a paraplegic. She's got a TED Talk that's got more than 2 million views. It's incredible. Make sure you go and check out that TED Talk. She's written numerous best-selling books, and they're making a movie about her in Hollywood right now. Because like Jim, Janine said to herself, the most important opinion is how I feel about myself. And in the face of that significant adversity, she said, what is the gift in this? So in the face of your adversity, always ask yourself, what is the gift in this? In your workbook, you've got a copy of the vulnerability reframe worksheets that you can use to help turn any fear and any doubt that you have into a strength and a source of immense power. Use that vulnerability reframe activity to channel the lessons of people like Jim and Janine. And when you're faced with that massive adversity in your own life, it happens to all of us from time to time, ask yourself, what is the gift in this so you can keep moving forward? Now, as people get older, the biggest limitation, the biggest limiting belief they put on themselves is age. They say, I am too old for this. So I've actually written an article that I wanted to share with you. I'm just going to post a link to this in the chat. It's got some examples of some incredible people all over the world who are able to achieve some amazing things and have some incredible experiences despite their ages. So you can go and check that out. The article is called The One Number That Doesn't Matter. And if you're surrounded by people who think small, guess what? You're going to think small too. And if you think small, you act small. I'm not talking about flying to the moon, although that's getting easier and easier to do that. I read an article yesterday that for 400 grand, apparently you can fly to the moon these days. But I implore you, in this one life you've been given, to make the most of it. Life is too short to think small. And when you can make a habit of implementing the 3 things that we're going through today, your possibilities will really only be limited by your imagination. So that's number 1, raise your idea of what's possible for you. Number 2, we need to create a plan for all it is that you want to achieve and experience. Now, I'm a huge proponent of plans, detailed plans, not perfect plans, because perfect plans stop you from taking action. And we need to make sure we're taking action. If you're watching this on video, you can see I've got this giant canvas print behind me with action written there that says action, the difference between having and wanting. Because when you do that, when we have these detailed plans, they reveal all that we need to achieve, and it gives you a step-by-step guide on how to get there. Because when you do that, you have so much more meaning and happiness in the present. Now, a lot of people talk about fear and anxiety, but fear and anxiety does not live in the present. It lives in the past, where we say, oh, I wish I did this different. Or it lives in the future. What if this happens? Our fear and anxiety does not live in the present. But once you've got a comprehensive idea of what success looks like to you in all areas, you can release yourself from that burden of that anxiety and that fear, because that means you can enjoy being truly present, because you've already written the ending of your story. You already know how the story ends. You've written it in fine detail. I'm going to show you how to do that shortly. So the only thing you need to focus on is enjoying the present, come rain, hail, or shine, and putting one foot in front of the other. Now, the resource I'm giving you access today has been used by individuals and companies in more than 20 countries. I know it works because I created it from lessons from interviewing more than 300 of the world's most successful and happiest people, and reading every book that I can find on mindset, on peak performance and happiness. And it's also the exact process that I use to this day that's enabled me to have some pretty cool experiences. And I know it's going to work for you too. Because one of the most important things that we can do is craft our own definition of success. Do you remember at the start, I said that people who feel like they're treading water or they're not living with purpose or with passion, it's because of two things. They're not clear on who they are, and they're not clear on where they want to go. So these are the things that we're going to get nailed for you today. Because when you have that definition of success, it paves the way for everything else to flow into your life at the right time. So to help you on that journey, you can go to page 12 of your workbook. You'll find a link to that in the chat, and I think you've been emailed it as well. Find the success plan template, page 12. It's called the success plan template. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to, and I'm conscious that you're getting a recording of this, so I know that you can go and revisit this at a later date. So we're going to move pretty fast through this, because I just want to give you a bigger picture overview of how to do that, and also give you the first few steps on how to make that, how to take the right action. So download your success plan template. You don't have to do it right now, but afterwards, go and download your success plan template and save it to whatever device you wish. A computer is best because that's where it's going to be the easiest to complete it. And then you can use any spreadsheet editor like Microsoft Excel to be able to craft your success plan. Since it is a spreadsheet, it's totally malleable. You can change headings, enter text, all of these different things, and it's pretty basic to use. You don't really need any experience in Microsoft Excel or spreadsheets. I'm not even particularly good at Microsoft Excel myself, and I created it in Excel, so that should give you a little bit of hope. So make sure you go and download that. And if you're struggling with it, at any time, seriously, reach out to me, reach out to my team. We'll help you with formatting. We'll help you with the items. The most important thing is that you get a success plan completed. This is my EA Jan. It's her email address. If there's anything you need related to your success plan, you can email her and we'll help to make sure that you've got your success plan completed. On the second tab of that success plan document, you will see very detailed step-by-step instructions on how to complete it. We've tried to make it as detailed as possible for you. And we are limited on time today, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview on how to complete it. But before we do that, I want you to quickly make a list of some of the things that you want to enjoy and experience and do in this one extraordinary life you've been given. Just make a list of 3 things. When you've got 1 or 2 or 3, you can drop that into the chat. It might give some other people some inspiration, but just write down on a notepad or on a phone or any device that you're using. Write down 3 things that you want to enjoy or experience or do in this one extraordinary life you've been given, and then drop them in the chat so everyone else can have a sticky beak at what you're doing. Maybe it's to take a 2-week holiday to Europe with your family. Maybe it's to attend the Super Bowl. Maybe it's to buy a house in San Diego or Martha's Vineyard. Maybe it's to give $100,000 to your favorite charity. Maybe it's a health or a fitness goal. Maybe it's to run the Paris Marathon. Maybe it's to sell a business that you have for, a certain dollar value. Whatever it is, just write down at least 3 things that you want to accomplish. All right, Harry, here we go. Travel. Yep. Awesome. I'd like to make this as specific as possible. You don't have to get crazy specific right now, but Harry, if we can be a bit more specific on what that travel looks like, that would be great. And also with writing, I think that'd be good. Let's get more specific on those items. You'll see why shortly. The more specific we are at calling in our dreams, the easier it's going to be to create the rest of this plan for us. Curtis, live abroad with family while working remotely for 6 months. Love it. Live to 100 in an able, healthy state. So good. Visit Iceland this summer. Awesome. Work remote internationally. Yeah, this is great. This is great. I'm just going to give you an extra 30 seconds to write some of these things down. You don't need to share them in the chat. I know these are pretty personal things, but just make sure that you've got at least 3 things written down that when you go and complete the success plan template, then you have a good start. Following my dad's World War II footsteps from Normandy to be released from the POW camp. Wow, Sarah, thank you for sharing. This is great. Eric, we see things like philanthropy in there. Let's get, you don't need to get specific in the chat, but just make sure when you're doing your own success plan template, just make sure we're specific in the dollar value, the cause that we want to contribute to. We want to just make sure that this is specific as possible. So what I want to do now is I'm just going to share my screen for a little bit. I'll zoom in so it's not too small. This is an idea of what the success plan, sorry, just give me one moment here. All right, you should now be able to see the success plan template as a spreadsheet on my screen. So the first things that we've done here, we go and update the date. So this was done as if it was the 1st of January. So the date will be 90 days from the start of the year. So the 31st of March, then you would change the 1-year date to the end of the year. 3 years, obviously 3 years from now. In your mission, a lot of people ask me, can you have a business mission as well as a personal mission? Yes, you absolutely can. Values, don't overthink that. Just put your values down. And then the next piece of that, and obviously your name, if your name is John Smith, that's a great coincidence, but I want you to make sure that you've just put your own name at the top there. Then the next part of this, those 3 things that we put down, here are just some examples. And ideally you want to get to sort of between 15 and 20 things. It doesn't matter what you put down as long as they're specific and they mean a lot to you. An example of something here might be, and the next step of that when you have those things is to think about where they fit in. Are they a 90-day goal? Are they a 1-year goal? Or are they a 3-year goal? So you just want to then enter them based in the category. We've got a whole bunch of different categories here on the left. There's going to be some overlap between different categories. For example, if you have a family goal, like this one here is an example, maybe it's to travel somewhere with your family. That could also be a travel goal. It doesn't matter where you put it. The most important thing is that you've got these things down. Most people, almost everyone, like barely anyone does this. Barely anyone thinks about who they are and where they want to go. And you can see hopefully already how powerful this is going to be. An example here, this is actually a real one for me, 300 journal entries by the end of the year. So what does that then look like in a 90-day goal? So I'll show you that on the next spreadsheet. So the most important thing here is just putting these things in where they need to go. If it's a holiday about 3 years away, you'd put that in for the 3-year column. If it's something for the next 90 days, you would put that in the 90-day column. If it's something for 1 year, you would put that here in the 1-year column. The next step from there, once you have those things written down, our goal here is then to complete the entire row. For an example, if your goal was to go away for a family holiday, we can tell what our core goals were, our core experiences that we want to have, because we put them in bold. We know that in 3 years, we want to go on this 2-week family ski trip to Big Sky in Montana. It would be beautiful, I'm sure. So what does that look like in 90 days? Remember, our goal here is to do the entire row. Well, in 90 days, maybe all we can do is identify a really good household budgeting tool that we can use to keep track of our finances. And maybe 1 year, because this needs to make this come true, needs to make this come true. Maybe for this one, it could be to research the cost. How much is this trip going to cost? We can block out the dates of when we want to do it, and we can implement that household budget to ensure that we can afford this trip without needing to go into credit card debt to be able to do it. An example of another goal that I have is every year I write an annual letter to my children. So an example of what that could look like as a 90-day goal would be to set a calendar notification to go off when it's time to write those annual letters. Doing that makes this come true. And in 3 years' time, it means that I would have had 3 annual letters written for my children. Another example you might have is a financial goal. Maybe in 3 years' time, you want to have $1 million in a diversified investment portfolio. What does that look like? Remember, our goal is to complete the row. In 90 days, maybe it's as simple as meeting with a trusted financial advisor to share your goals publicly and figure out what is the plan that you need to implement to be able to do that. And then what does that look like? How does this make this come true? Well, maybe in 1 year, you need to make sure that you've set up a process so you've got $10,000 a month from your household income being put into an investment account. This makes this come true, makes this come true. And the perfect destination over here is really our why on why we want to do these things. So an example of that for this one, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. An example of that might be, it might give you financial freedom, it might pay for your children's education, and it might help you enjoy retirement. That's an example of the success plan template. So at the very end, you want to make sure this whole thing for you is filled out. You've got access to the template. And again, we have people who can help to make sure that you have got this completed. And on the second tab, this is, you'll see 3 example tabs here at the front. The reason there's 3 is because I wanted to show you how to do this and walk you through it in real time. But the instructions here, it's very detailed. It's got a bunch of examples that you can use that's going to show you how to do that. Again, if there's any questions on this, we'll make sure that we tackle these at the end. I'm going to stick around for as long as you need me. So to sort of give a bit of a reminder, a bit of a review of those things, we want to think about what it is that we want to experience and do in our life. We want to add them into the correct categories and the correct timelines. We want to complete the entire row. So this makes this come true, makes this come true. And then the next step from there is what we're going to talk about next in terms of implementing this plan. So do this in your own time. It might take you an hour, it might take you 2 hours to do. And I tell you what, a lot of people have resistance to getting this done. But if you've turned up today, it means that you have the commitment to be able to go and getting something like this done, because it's so powerful to do this, because most people I work with have never, ever done anything like this in their entire lives. So it's unbelievably worthwhile. It's a great step to be able to move away from being a spectator in life to being a participant. So that's number 2, creating that plan to achieve and experience everything that you want in life. So then the final piece of this puzzle is implementation. So how do we implement this plan? Well, once you're clear on who you are and where you want to go, which is what we've just gone through, we can map out the individual actions that need to be taken to get us where we need to be. And then we're going to create a system for that, which we'll go through right now. So if you go and look, once you've completed your success plan, you can go and look at the column of all the 90-day goals. And we're going to say, cool, if those 90-day goals are going to come true, what individual action items do I need to take, and do I need to schedule in my calendar or however I want to do it to make those 90-day goals come true? If you can systemize that process by having something automated where a simple calendar notification goes off when it's time for something to be done, your probability of success of doing these things is infinitely greater. And again, you can release yourself from so much fear and discomfort about what's going to happen, because again, it lives in the future and the past. And a lot of the things we're talking about today is to help you find meaning and to help you find presence in your life. So the way that I do that, I use something as simple as Google Calendar, and I literally look at what my 90-day goals are, and I determine the actions that are going to happen. What actions do I need to take to make those 90-day goals come true? And in the lead up to that date, I schedule them in the calendar. So when I do that, I receive the calendar notification, for example. Oh, it says it's time for me to write my annual letter for my children. Cool. I'm going to go and do that right now. And it means that I haven't had to worry about it for the whole year, because I have the process of getting those things done. And when the 90 days is up, all we do is we restart that process of our 90-day goals. We don't reset our success plan. We just think about, cool, we're on track now. What does that look like for our next 90 days? Do our 90-day action items, and we keep moving forward like that. And once a year, I set a calendar note for this too. Once a year, redo your success plan. It's going to be so much easier to do in year 2, because all we're doing is evolving it and tweaking it a little bit, because the bones of it is going to be pretty much the same. And then you just repeat that process. What I wanted to do now is to give you a little bit of an overview of what that looks like on a given day. Now, a lot of you might know me from my podcast called Win the Day. And the reason winning the day is so important is because each day we're faced with 2 choices. Are we going to be a spectator, or are we going to be a participant? Now, the way that I refer to that is that each day, if we do not make the decision to win, we have automatically made the decision to lose. The word intent and intentional has come out a bunch of times today. We've seen that in the chat. Without that clear intent of what we want for the day, we drift and we procrastinate and we never get anything meaningful done. And over time, that manifests in three things. It manifests in poverty, ill health, and misery. And clearly, we don't want those three things. So to give you a little bit of an overview of how I structure my day, and it all comes back down to the morning of how I set myself up for that day, I'll give you a bit of an overview of that. A lot of people ask me, like, what's the best time to get out of bed? I've interviewed, I'm actually got the world's foremost authority on sleep coming back on my podcast in a couple of weeks. He tells me that it doesn't matter what time you get out of bed. The most important thing is the output that you have in the hours when you're awake. And I'm not even a morning person. A lot of people are surprised to hear that. Here is my morning routine to give you an idea. The very first part of that is the acknowledgement. We've already spoken about there. The day is there to be won or lost. So the moment my feet hit the ground, I ask myself every single day, this day is there to be won or lost. What am I going to do? Am I going to win the day or am I going to lose it? And every single day I make that decision to win. In fact, I have win the day written here on this bracelet to remind me every single day. So that is the acknowledgement phase of my morning routine. It takes 5 seconds, but it's a huge mental shift. It's a very simple tweak. After the acknowledgement phase, I move into sacrifice. That's where, although I have said and I've stated my intention for the day, I haven't really proved it. So what am I going to do? What can I sacrifice to prove that I've turned up for today? So what do I do then? I actually step into a cold shower. Now, let me be very clear. I'm not telling you need to go and have a cold shower. If you want to do a cold shower, it's great. I do it for about 4 minutes in the morning. And it's amazing, actually, how much energy it gives you for the day. I never, ever look forward to the cold shower, but it's such a great way where, for me, I have proven it's my sacrifice. I've proved that I've turned up for today. So it doesn't matter whether it's a cold shower or making your bed or going for a run, doing exercise, a mobility routine, whatever it is, just do something for a few minutes. It's your sacrifice as part of your daily discipline to prove that you have turned up for the day. So acknowledgement, sacrifice. The next part is alignment. Now, the alignment phase for me involves sitting outside in the sunshine. I just sit in my backyard and I feel the sunshine. I have a morning coffee as an Australian. If you've been to Australia, you'll know how big the coffee culture is in Australia. So that one coffee that I have in the morning is very, very important to me. So I feel the sunshine, I have a sip of my coffee, and then I write in my journal what's unique about the last 24 hours. I have 2 kids. It's just, I find it really interesting and soothing to be able to do that. So that's how I get centered. I start creating something for the day, which is my journal entry that I can revisit years and years down the track to see how our lives have evolved. So that is the alignment phase because it puts me in the right headspace and makes me feel centered. And to be totally upfront with you, I had a moment 2 weeks ago. We had a newborn that joined us on the 5th of January. We already have a 2.5-year-old, and we had a baby boy join us on the 5th of January. And I had a morning where I woke up and I wanted to try and get a whole bunch of things done. I had a really important business meeting at 9 o'clock. It is the first time I skipped my morning routine in literally years. It was a disaster. It put me in such a bad frame of mind to the point where my wife had to say to me, look, just go outside the room and just go and take a deep breath and just reset, which is exactly what I needed to hear. That's why I know how important the morning routine and having this daily discipline is. So the final part of this morning routine, and it's what I do actually as part of my journaling, I write down 3 things, only ever 3 things, never any more than that, 3 things that will make today a win. What are 3 things that I'm going to do, no matter what, that are going to make today a win? And they're never all in the same category. They're never all about business. They're never all about fitness. Maybe it's to go on, maybe it's a business goal, maybe it's a fitness goal, and maybe it's a family goal. Maybe I'm going to make the decision to go and cook a lovely dinner, a lovely healthy dinner for my family or something like that. So that's my morning routine: the acknowledgement, sacrifice, the alignment, and then the 3 things. If you can set yourself up with your own version for that, I promise you the meaning and the productivity that you will have will increase tenfold through that alone. So that process that we have gone through here is how we implement that plan for our well-lived life. I know it works because I've helped people all over the world do it. What I want you to do now, just before we do a quick recap of what we've gone through today. I want you to post a comment in the chat. What's been a takeaway or something that you've had today? Is there maybe an aha moment or an action item, or what's a valuable takeaway that you have learned or taken a note on from what we've gone through today? I would love to see that in the chat. While you're doing that, I'm just going to give a quick recap of these things that we've spoken about. The very first one was raising your idea of what's possible for you. I really can't emphasize that enough. That's really, really important. Next is creating a plan for all that you want to achieve. I have now literally given you the template. You have the support to be able to get this done. There is no excuse for you not to go and do that. And finally, implement that plan. Win the day. Because if you do not make the decision to win, you have automatically made the decision to lose. I can see these things here. I'm just going to review some of these things here in the chat. It's great to see. I love a good active chat. Love the 3 actions for a win idea. Yeah, it's so powerful. Committing, definitely. Got to commit every single day. Abby, the cold showers. I have such a funny story, actually. The first time I tried to do a cold shower, I hopped out after like 10 seconds. It was really, really embarrassing. I said to my wife, I'm going to go and have this cold shower. It's going to be great. 10 seconds later, she saw me and she's like, what are you doing back here? And then on the second day, I thought, you know what? I'm going to set a timer on my phone. So I set a 5-minute timer and I made sure I could see it from the shower. And I said, I'm not leaving. Doesn't matter what happens. I'm not leaving this cold shower until that timer goes off. And a funny thing happened. After 1 minute in there, your body actually gets a little bit used to it. So ever since then, I have not had a single problem. So that was my first foray into cold showers. Tim, daily journaling. There's an app that I use called the Day One Journal. One is spelled O-N-E. The Day One Journal. It's really, let me actually just get a link for you right now. It's a really great, I'm coming up on 200 consecutive days now of journal entries. It's been fantastic for me and a great way to get centered. So I've just put a link to that there into the chat. Participate versus spectate. Love the success plan. Winning each day. Eric, at 75, how do I replicate your level of energy? Thank you. Hopefully through the plan that we have today, and just getting around the right people is really critical. And if all else fails, good coffee. Planning, participate versus spectate. Fear and anxiety are from the past and present. Live more in the present. Absolutely. Yeah. Take ownership. Yes. And plan. Setting goals in the spreadsheet with actionable steps. Yes, yes, yes. So much yes. And when you can make a habit of what we've gone through today, you'll have more meaning than you ever could have dreamed of. You'll regularly be in service to other people just because you can. You'll enjoy the pursuit of that ongoing education because the more valuable you become, the more value you have to give. You'll be doing things that keep your body and mind sharp. You'll have a weekly calendar of things that give you that energy. You'll regularly experience things that get you out of your comfort zone so you can grow and you can feel alive. You'll finally have enough resources to do anything that you want. And ultimately, your relationships will be much stronger than ever before. That is a well-lived life. And that's what I think all of us should do in this one life that we've been given. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I have a whole page of notes and the success plan template open on my computer. We're going to go to question and answer shortly. I just wanted to remind everyone now's the time to pop in the chat box. James is here to answer your questions, so think about what you want him to address. And Brian, I'll go to you for another story of working with clients on these concepts.
All right, so there are a couple takeaways that I got from that, and I'm going to try to work in that cold shower tomorrow and save on some rising utility bills. But if everybody gets woken up in my house, I know why. But James said a few things, and one was one that stuck out to me for the part that I'm going to speak to today was, who do you surround yourself with? The other is defining goals, defining a purpose. And then the last one is age is just a number, and this will all tie in together. So one of the things from being a financial advisor and being able to help people is really start to help pull them along with defining a purpose. A lot of our clients, they come to us, at different phases in life. Many of them self-direct, they start out a career, they just start adding money, they build a family and so on and so forth, and life just takes a number of years. And it's usually at a moment of change they start to realize, should I raise my hand for help? That could be anything from switching jobs. That could be starting to realize, hey, I want to retire one day. I'm starting to get a little burned out on what I've been doing. I want to change a path. Can I do that? Is it smart for me to do that at this point? And then the other one that we all naturally will encounter at some point is, at some point, declining health. Maybe it's a partner or someone in your life that you're taking care of that, at this point, there's just taking too much time. I can't focus on our financial matters. I need somebody to help me with them. But one of the things that our goal as a fiduciary is to pull out what the purpose is and be able to help put that plan together that James was talking about and help match up those numbers and make sure that you can answer at the end of the day, am I going to be okay? And that's really like one of the benefits I see of surrounding yourself with a good team. A financial advisor may be one of those, a good estate attorney, things like that. This is just one example. One thing that we focus on, and I'll get to in a moment, is a little story about, it's something called life phase investing. And that age is just a number is a great component of life phase investing, because we all come in and out of different phases in our life, different transitions, different moments where our financial goals aren't necessarily age-based. And you need a plan that's going to adapt with that sort of period, and not just focus on your age, how old are you, and how much risk you're willing to take. Those are two of the most common things that our profession has pushed on investors, and we feel they're not actually genuine. It's a great starting point, but when you're defining a purpose, it might be 3 years, it might be 20 years, it doesn't matter how old you are. So I have an example of a client who, for the most part, followed that path I was talking about. They started out a career, they saved money, they had a family, they went in and out of things. And then one day they started to realize, hey, we're starting to go into retirement, and we want to answer the question, do we have enough to do all the things that we have to accomplish? And so one of those things in their path was to ask, hey, can we go into one of these over 55 communities where there's different levels of care if we need it? We want to change up what we're doing. We're living in a pretty remote place, and we need some people around us that, have similar phases of life. And they engaged us. It was a little hard for one of the partners to hand over investment control, but eventually that person did it. And as time went on, we were able to get them on a path to be able to afford moving into the facility or the community they wanted to live in. And then one of the things that just happened, this is life transitions, things that we don't plan on, health of one of them began to decline. And the one that began to decline was the person who was handling all the bill pay, all the investing before, basically just picked up and took care of that part of the relationship. Well, as that started to happen, the spouse that was caring for that person stepped in and said, well, it's great that Halbert Hargrove was involved because they know what you've been doing. That person has since passed, and we've been able to carry that other partner through this whole relationship and be able to make that transition to being alone, and start to define a purpose for her retirement, being single now. So that's just one example of where we can step in and help people and guide them through that goal plan, those goal settings that James talked to, and being able to pivot as things change and have your investments change with them. So Angela, I'm going to hand it back to you for Q&A, and I'll go on mute here.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So James, I do see one public question. I've also gotten some private questions for you. So the first from Ginger in the chat box I see. Can you talk more about what the sacrifice actually does to help you commit as part of how you start winning the day in the morning?
Absolutely. The sacrifice part's very, very important because it gives you a sense of accomplishment and puts you in a positive mindset very, very early. Now, with someone, again, I said it before, I'm not a morning person, but I am once this process has started. I am good to go once I've made that sacrifice, because already I feel good at that point. I feel like I've already gotten something done. It puts me in a positive mindset, and it makes everything else in the day feel easier. Just do something hard, because then all those other things, it just gives you that momentum. And that's what we're after. Just do what you can to initiate a bit of momentum, because that way you're going to be more unstoppable throughout the day.
Fantastic. This is one I got privately, and I think it relates to the one that you were just asked. What about some tips for working through fear and anxiety from your past or future? Because sometimes that prevents the momentum in going forward. What would you say to that?
It does. The fear and anxiety is a big one. So that's where you can pursue that calm and really start to figure out what is this. Like I had a client of mine, a business owner in Australia, and the other day, and what we realized to him that all of his fear wasn't real. And there's a quote from Seneca who said, "What is it? We suffer more." I almost forgot that for a second. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. So what we realized for him, he was so worried about his business partner was going to leave. So what we did for him was, cool, let's make sure that you've got a lunch on the books where you check in as friends and just find out, cool, let's make sure that we're on the same page. How are you doing personally? Are there any unsaid thoughts that you have that you want to make sure we put on the table today? And then, cool, let's also plan a vision for the business. That's how we removed that specifically. Another one for him, the same guy, he was dealing with a lot. His ex-wife of about 7 or 8 years ago, they still had a lot of financial things linked. So I was having a conversation with a financial advisor and also making sure that the ex-wife, who we still had a very close relationship with, she actually still works in the business together, that they're on the same page, because if he's feeling a lot of that stress, then she probably is too. So let's just have a clean break. Let's get clear on the assets and what we've got there so we can move forward. And then he also had some things of his own. A big limitation for him was he just wanted to finally have that financial freedom. This is a guy who was, making about $400,000 a year, but it doesn't matter how much you're earning if you're still spending a fair bit at the same time. So I suggested to him, go and see a financial advisor and get a plan. That way you've got X amount of money being deducted from your pay packet automatically without you needing to do a thing. Put that in a diversified investment portfolio. And then those three things we alleviated almost immediately. Business owner, ex-wife, which provided freedom for his existing relationship, and then financial freedom for his own life. To me, fear, there is a lot to be said about getting out of your comfort zone to go and face that. So I think you can just, you don't want to just throw a screaming kid into the pool to teach them how to swim, although I know they do that in some countries. But I think just getting clear on where that limiting belief comes from, and then just doing some things that can expose you to that situation where you I'm spending a lot of time with this question because it is really important. That just changes your mind around it. I interviewed on my podcast a guy called Nick Lowry, who was formerly the most accurate kicker in NFL history. And I said to him, like most NFL games you watch, it seems to come down to the kicker at the end of the game, almost inevitably. It's crazy how often that happens. And I said to him, how are you able to think clearly and do that when you have is it a second or something like that to kick that in front of 50,000 people and hundreds of millions around the world? And he said they practice in that chaos, but when you overcome a bad experience and a memory, a lot of the fear we have is because of memories. He replays the memory where he puts a humorous voice on it. So an example of something he did was like a Looney Tunes voice or like an Ace Ventura voice or something like that. Or you can replay the memory with a different type of music. You could even play that music in the background while you're doing it. And what you can do is you can start to rewire that memory you have into something more positive. So there's a whole bunch of different things in there that I'd mentioned. Hopefully that helps. But any follow-up questions, happy to handle that.
That's great. Thank you for addressing that so much, because I agree that's a biggie. And I love how you made it very tactical. It almost seems like taking those anxieties and fears, voicing them. And I could see even where those practical things you mentioned fit in with the success plan template. So it's not just an idea.
Definitely.
It's part of what you're planning for.
Yeah, definitely, Angela. Sorry, one more thing on that as well is a lot of the time our mental health challenges happen through a resistance that we are putting up to a situation we're in. What would happen if you welcomed those feelings and saw them for what they are rather than resisting them, especially for people who they might feel like they're in a depression? A lot of people are. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. Like actually pretty much everyone that I know has gone through some type of confronting moment or a period of soul searching in the last 2 years. It's just a product of the times we're in. So instead of trying to resist that, what happens if you welcome it? You try and identify it for what it is. And you'll find that not being so hard on yourself is an easy way to do that. And I actually, again, being totally upfront with this, the biggest thing that I've struggled with in my life was negative self-talk. And a way that I was able to overcome that. I'm very kind and compassionate to everyone else around me, very, very, very hard on myself. And it can be through trivial things that really mean nothing. I would just have those things. And I started doing a meditation practice, and that for me worked really well. I did that. I had a goal I actually bought a sheet where it was 10 rows of, 1 to 10. It was actually 1 through to 100. And my goal was to do 100 meditations in 100 days. And I noticed after 70 days of meditation, that negative self-talk completely disappeared and it hasn't come back. And I stopped doing the meditation and I moved to the journaling. That to me gives me that same self of presence and calm. The journaling is what works well for me. So just trying a few different things that give you a bit of joy and get you centered, I think is really powerful.
It's fantastic, and actually natural segue to the last question I got privately. And that was what about uncovering meaning? How does someone do it? And what if they aren't sure what their why is?
Great question. So I don't think you're going to find it by sitting at home or in your apartment doing nothing. I think it's great to get out there and get your hands dirty. Go and read, go for a walk on the beach, go and do some experiences and travel and have some adventures and meet some interesting people and think about what are those things that you naturally love to do. Go and try some new activities. There have been some things in my life that I always thought that I was so bad at them, but it's because I had never actually done them. By the time I started doing them, I was like, wow, I actually enjoy this and I have some aptitude at it. It's just that I had never done it previously. I'd never been taught. My parents taught me a bunch of other great things, but some things they didn't teach me. So sometimes we can be quite hard on ourselves. So I think just going out there and just experiencing life. A lot of people ask me, how do I figure out what's my passion in life? And I think just going out there and experiencing life. That's the way to do it. It is not sitting home and doing nothing. How do you know what your favorite ice cream flavor is? You go and try, you go to Jenny's ice cream. A lot of you might know Jenny's ice cream. Almond brittle is my favorite. I got to almond brittle by trying a whole bunch of different flavors. So, get out there and try a whole bunch of different things, and then you'll find what resonates with you.
Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions, but I do want to take a moment. Thank you sincerely, James, for sharing your practical advice with us and being personal in how this applies to your life and how you've seen it play out in other people's lives. And thank you to Samantha and Brian for sharing their stories as well. I told everybody at the beginning that if you stayed at the end, we have a special offer for you. And so we want to invite you, if you'd like to talk to a Halbert Hargrove advisor about how to design your well-lived life, you can schedule a free, no obligation call with one of our advisors. You can contact us one of two ways. You can go to our website at halberthargrove.com/contact. There's a contact page there. Or you can email us at hhteam@hhga.com. As James mentioned, today's webinar has been recorded. So if you want to go back through it and think a little more about what he said, work through the workbook, fill out your success plan template, we encourage you to do that. Thanks again, and cheers to your well-lived life.